I really, I mean, I'm going to just own it. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have more people showing up. I did have a couple of people tell me as they were leaving, well, I mean, the Gibsons, for example, left and said, well, you know how we feel. Gibsons, you know, if you don't know, normally go to 8 o'clock. And this summer, they went to 10:15 because I wasn't allowing 8 o'clock to go next door. We're going to keep 8 o'clock right where it is. But the 10:15 service we had across the way, and the Gibsons preferred that, so they went to that. I did have somebody else send me an email saying, well, you know how I feel. Sorry, I can't be there. So.
Well, Gail wanted to come for the same reason.
Gail?
Gail McGuire.
Yeah.
Said she didn't make it, I guess, but she did want to voice how she appreciated being able to be in the building.
Well, we're gonna come back to that for sure. But let's get into it, shall we? So just to back up a little bit, our summer, and for the benefit of those of you who weren't here this past summer, let me tell you a little bit about what we did this last summer.
Thank you.
First of all, our 8 o'clock service, I don't really mess with it. I don't want to mess with that. I think it's important for this is my personal feeling, and I suspect a good many of you actually appreciate this. But my personal feeling is there ought to be kind of a safe place. If you want to have predictable worship, you want to have Trinity, you know, safeguarded as the place where that happens. That's our historic spiritual home. It ought to be kept safe. And I shouldn't do anything that would unsettle that sense that there's always going to be that protected. So 8 o'clock, you know, we do right one week, we do right two the other week. You know the difference between right one and right two. Okay. By the way, we have some folks who came and joined us today, and they're staying for the forum. So welcome to Ben, welcome to Trinity, welcome to the forum. It's all lovely. So that's our pattern at 8 o'clock. And then things get just a little bit more creative, maybe we could say, at the later service. And in the summer, what I have done the last couple of summers, and it's not entirely new to this congregation's played with liturgies a little bit anyhow, but I offer it as a liturgical staycation. We can stay, but we can do some things differently. And this summer, what we did starting in May 29th and running through the middle of September is we used the prayer book, the New Zealand prayer book, and we used our liturgy out of there. And then the Scottish Episcopal Church from July 24th through Labor Day. And so that was a way of sort of mixing it up. And we've done other things. In particular, this is partly educational. Part of the reason for doing these particular churches was to just draw some attention to two different parts of that big Anglican communion of which we are a part, and to see what they're doing with liturgical changes. So that when we do liturgical changes here, and when we get ready for a new prayer book in our church, which is
maybe in our lifetime.
I was going to say not in our lifetime, but it's going to be a conversation going on, about the new prayer book, because what we use now is now the old prayer book. As we do these things, understand that this isn't just something that a few people in New York got excited about and thought the rest of us should care about too. This is something happening everywhere. And so this was a chance for us just to experience what they're doing in a couple other parts of that big Anglican communion of which we are, in some respects, a small part. And again, so summer worship then, we kept Trinity, 8 o'clock. This as it happens, hello, come on in, welcome. Barbara, you buy them a cup of coffee or something? This, by the way, this is one of our Stations of the Cross. One of those sad, poignant moments as it happens. As it happens, it was just a beautiful morning in the church before anybody else showed up one Sunday, and I noticed this was just all illuminated. And then later I learned that this was the day of the Orlando shootings. And so the grief sort of implied in that just seemed especially poignant. Anyhow, but that's at Trinity, where we have our traditional symbols and stations. Again, we 8 o'clock stayed there. The 10:15 service worshiped across the street at St. Helens Hall. Okay? That's just background information. Special thanks to the altar guild. every chance I get, I want to make sure I said special thanks to the altar guild. A lot of folks who just come to church just went across the street. It wasn't a big deal for them, except they loved it. But the only way it happened is because other people were doing extra work, most notably the altar guild. So let's pause. Here's a little ad for the altar guild. Just quickly, what does the term altar guild bring to mind?
A lot of work.
Okay, a lot of work. I'm really kind of looking. What's the stereotype you have in your head when you think altar guild?
Women in ministry.
Women
It's
in
the ministry
ministry.
of the church, so people take care of the altar, setting up for the communion.
Well, that's what they do. I'm really kind of looking I'm looking for negative
A
stereotypes.
little gray-haired lady.
Little gray-haired lady. I love little gray-haired ladies. But okay. With a doily on her head
And white gloves.
and white gloves
And persnickety.
and persnickety.
Crabby. This is my experience of altar guild in the church as a kid, not now.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you for adding that, dear. Those who don't know, that's my wife, so whatever she says, sometimes people assume I say too. Doesn't often work that way, but that's
Not
okay.
once you get to know the two of them.
No, that's true. But if you didn't know. All right. Well, altar guild needs help. Just putting it out there. If you're interested, this is my pitch. Others can join in. This is sometimes an altar guild prayer. Give strength for the daily task and help us to see each duty, however small, as a service done for thee. You pray that every time you come in, those of you who work altar guild, right? No, never mind. I don't want to ask if you pray.
So we all expect that our service and the table is going to be there. We don't stop and think about how that happens, and we don't appreciate the people who do it.
Exactly. Generally unseen. If they're doing their job right, the rest of the congregation doesn't even notice. It's just there. It's like by magic.
And we'd be all upset if it wasn't, including the priest. But
Including the altar guild.
They're the ones who, yeah, probably they care the most when it's done wrong. I might be second most, but the altar guild probably cares most. People in the back row saying, I don't care. But we do, really.
But it's even, for me, I'll have to say, that comment about the persnickety and that's doing it wrong. That's more wrong than whether or not the candles are in the right place exactly, you know. I mean, it's very important that work is done respecting each other rather than criticizing each other.
So, continuing our little pitch, if you think you might be interested, what does it take? And if you break it down in some respects, it really isn't a lot critical, but if we had everything staffed properly, it doesn't really turn into that much work. Set up and clean up for a Wednesday service. We have those weekly midday services. Really, if you came in, I mean, we would probably all be a little uncomfortable. If you came in 15 minutes ahead of time, you get it set up. You could stay for the service, and 15 minutes later, you could walk out the door. And the service, I really worked, that midweek service, it's just a half hour. So really, you could literally do it in an hour and still go to church. Yeah, that might be making everybody feel a little uncomfortable, but theoretically you can do that. But if you, most typically, altar guild members come in sometime in the morning, they set up, they go on their day, and they come back sometime later in the afternoon and just clean up. Yeah. Saturday, they typically come in, and it depends which team. They're typically on teams of up to 4, ideally 4 people. And if you come in on Saturday, I'm told there's a lot of chatter that happens, and they don't always work very efficiently, but they have a good time, which is one of the things that the altar guild does. It's a great way just to get to meet a few people. Theoretically, you could do it probably in 30 minutes. Everything you need to do, unless you're just talking a lot, in which case it'll take a longer time. Theoretically, you can do that on Sunday morning. Probably not a really good idea, As I said, if you came in on Saturday and you discovered that the candlesticks broke and you needed to go out to Bed Bath and Beyond to buy new candles for the altar just to use on Sunday. I mean, I'm making up crazy stories now, but if you found something wrong on Saturday, it's easier to fix it for Sunday than it is the other way around. But typically, it's not a big job. And then cleanup, a little bit of minimal setup beforehand. I so appreciate having a glass of water. Some weeks more than others. I really needed that water this morning. Those are the kinds of things that they do. Little unseen things that are really helpful. So a little bit of work beforehand, and then after the 10 o'clock service, clean up. Again, not onerous.
I don't see where it says you need to be a woman.
No.
Well, I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
I'm just trying to lay out what the job is.
Gotcha.
You're right, and there's nothing that seems gender specific to this. And the point coming back to the summer worship is when there were two services in two different places, it meant they had to clean up two different places. They had to set up two different places. So there was a bit more work. And that's, again, the unseen work that fell to them more than probably to any other group or individual. And then there are the occasional memorials and weddings, which will add, again, maybe another hour in the course of a given week. Ideally, four-member teams working together for fun and fellowship, plus the coordinating of efforts and to reduce what any one person has to do. Altar Guild help is needed. See, this is your invitation. You are invited. New members are needed. Men can serve. Couples or families, possibly, would be one way of doing it. So it's actually, if you're interested, a good way to get to know a few other people in a different way without having, especially if you're an introvert, to put too much out there. So I offer that. Now there is some speculation that maybe the name needs to change, that maybe men wouldn't be comfortable coming into an altar guild because altar guild sounds like persnickety women with gray hair and doilies on their heads and white gloves on their hands. So Sacristan's team, I mean, we've floated some different ideas. I think any of us involved would make that name change in a heartbeat if we thought it made a difference. So if it makes a difference to you, let me know. There's no special training needed or spiritual depth. We have mentors available. And this is that question. Do we need to reimagine this unseen but critical ministry? Yes, ma'am.
Well, my stereotype comes from my grandmother, who was, just,
Lovely.
she was amazing, but that's who I always, as a child, did altar guilds with. And that was, so, yeah, she was very precise and persnickety about how it needed to be done. But our altar guild, what we have, comes from a time when women were not ordained. We've been ordaining women for 40 years. And this altar guild still works as though there are few ministries available to women in the church, and this is one of them. And so, yes, I would say absolutely we need to reimagine this unseen but critical ministry.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
You know what I always vision with Altar Guild too is ironing all the stuff.
Oh yeah, that clear linen, oh
Ironing
my
all
God.
the stuff.
Ironing the clean white linen.
Mm-hmm.
Dry cleaners are wonderful.
Right. But it didn't used to be that way,
I
right?
know, that was my grandmother. That
Part of
clear
Altar
linen
Guild
took
was-
over the bedroom.
Yeah.
Linen all over the place.
Mhm.
There are still tasks that need to be done. The question is how to do them, and do we have to do them the way we've always done it?
Well, and there is somebody who takes the linen home
Yeah.
every week
We have a linen angel.
and, and does it, so it's,
Yeah, so if you're afraid getting on altar guild will get you trapped at that job, here's the good news, somebody does that.
For now.
That's nice to know though, and it is
For
for
now.
now.
For now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the laundry does a nice job.
And the laundromats do good work. And there have certainly been times when people have said, oh no, we can't take it to the laundromat. They're commercial, not spiritual.
They put it in their spiritual
They
tub.
put it in, oh, they do that, they have the special spiritual, okay.
With holy water.
They put it in the white tub.
In the white tub.
Oh, remember the
All right,
one's just wine that
So,
comes out.
I'm putting it out there. It won't be the last time you hear that we're looking for people to step up and help out with that critical but unseen. Not terribly onerous, though truth be told, not real high, whatever, if that's what you're looking for. And it's menial work in some ways, but good people, lovely people. So, all right, well, let's get back to the.
Oh,
Who is that? So, St. Helens in the summer, the only way it worked is because Altar Guild did things, and others as well. We had greeters. How many of you were greeters this summer? Once or twice? 1, 2, 3, half a dozen of you anyhow? Was it okay?
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. It was fun.
It was nice.
We could do that all year, you know.
We could.
We could. Musicians, they had to do things a little differently. She hated my taking this picture of her, by the way. Oh, well. Nursery staff and volunteers. Good news is we got both rooms equipped, so we can do nursery there as easily as we can do it here. Coffee hour hosts and participants, that took a little extra. Because we did coffee hour here, and we had to walk across the street, and a lot of people just didn't bother to walk that far, but a lot of people did. And our coffee hour hosts were faithful to the task, and we had a good time. This was our ice cream social that we had Sunday, which was a coffee hour up a notch. And what else? Who else?
The people who brought the name tags across the street.
Yeah.
Those are
Was
greeters.
That was huge, actually.
Sometimes it was the greeters and sometimes it was just people who,
Sometimes it was you and me.
yes, it was.
thank you.
And
Jim.
Oh, well, you brought the flowers.
I did bring flowers occasionally.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the other thing, yeah.
So, all right.
and Mark and the building and grounds people that move chairs around.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. Cheers.
Theoretically, the chairs got put back after a group disrupted them during the middle of the week, but theoretically and reality don't always come up together. Yeah, good point. All right. So, here's some statistical information. June through Labor Day, so this is the first Sunday in June, and this is Labor Day weekend. The blue line here is 2005, the orangish line there is 2016. I said 2005, I meant 2015, I'm sorry. Same thing here, so this is last year, this is this year. Average Sunday attendance, 8 o'clock, statistically the same, 45, 43. I couldn't come up with that being a big difference. That said, I do know that Pat and Marie Gibson, who always go to 8, went to 10:15 this summer, so there's 2 right there.
They like the service.
They like the
As
service
well as-
and they like the space, yes. So that's, that's sort of flat. 10:15, 83 last year on average, 97 this year. This one Sunday here where this is the only Sunday in 2015 that reached 100 all summer.
In this hall, in,
When we did services last Sunday, we stayed at Trinity, last year. So blue, always at Trinity. The only Sunday in 2015 that we beat 100 was that Sunday. That was the Sunday that we said goodbye to Willie Hoffer.
Mm.
Okay? So the only I think it's a fair statement to say the only Sunday we hit 100 during the summer last year was for a special occasion. Whereas this year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Sundays, we had 100 or more across the street. Why?
festivals in town,
Hmm?
festivals in town.
There were festivals in town in 2015.
Greeters.
Greeters,
Space,
maybe. The space,
it's space.
maybe. The
Donald
creative
Trump,
liturgy,
people are hoping,
Maybe.
going to pray against him. Donald Trump.
politics. Stuff goes on in the world around us. It isn't just what we do into church. Maybe. We actually revamped our counting forms. Partly because I was suspicious we weren't getting accurate head counts.
But
Do we have a better head count this year than we had a year before? Maybe. I just want to let there's a lot of reasons why the numbers may have been up this year over the year before. Yes, ma'am.
It just seemed like there were more people.
It did to me.
It didn't just seem it, there were.
Yeah, I mean, but that's was the perception is that it was almost full over there. I mean, not
We actually,
crowded, but
we actually, after a couple of weeks, I asked Mark to bring more chairs in because one of the differences over there is you can put chairs down. And so early on, I said, don't put about 100 chairs on the floor. And then after doing this a couple of weeks, I said, maybe you should put another row in. And if you squeeze things just a little bit up, you can put another row in, and nobody notices it. And that was intentional. I didn't want to have it feel empty, so I put enough chairs in that it feels good. And so
I
had to
have a
put more chairs.
question, and I know I'm way behind.
Yeah.
Like years behind. But what is the reason in the first place to be going over there? Not that I think it's a bad idea, but just why did we start doing that?
Well, as I said at the beginning, it was done as a liturgical staycation. That's why we were doing what we did. And it was to do something different during the summer months. I know for a certainty that a good number of people not only like that worship space, but prefer that worship space over this space. I'm not going to guess how many. I'm not. I've heard somebody say a majority of people go to 10:15 service like that space more than this space. I don't know that that's true.
it's
It may be true,
voluntary.
but I don't know it's true. I do know with a certainty that there are a good number of people who do like that space and even prefer that space over the old space here. So it was a chance just to give them some time. You know, my balancing act as rector is to try and find ways of providing what people want and need when those wants and needs don't line up one with the other. Not everybody thinks this way. So how can I give something to those who would like that, if only for a season? Yes, ma'am.
Well, one thing that wasn't mentioned is I think that the chairs lend themselves to people sitting closer to each other than pews do. I don't think people like to touch somebody that they don't know, and so they won't fill a pew in this sanctuary, whereas they will actually sit closer to one another in the sanctuary across the street.
Interesting.
Here's something to that, yeah.
The other thing about the pews is they won't, if they can't get in and out without climbing over somebody. And there's
Our rows, when we have chairs, are typically, we could make them smaller, but typically we provide more space between rows. We also have chairs on the sides, so you can get in. You have 4 access points instead of 2.
Communion is much more straightforward over there than it is here. This is just a mess. And some people, I know this for a fact, find that uncomfortable. What do I do? How do I do this? Whereas over there, it's you walk up and you do it.
Well, and you come back to that uncomfortable is a key issue, because if something is uncomfortable, especially for a new person, it's a reason not to come back. Why would I want to go again where I'm not comfortable?
But if you have good ushers, it's not confusing.
It's
Yeah.
not as
Yet,
confusing, but
yet, just
Yeah.
about every Sunday over here, it gets messed up.
I'm wondering if the website is also new and improved over last year, more inviting if you're a visitor.
I'm looking at Bill, who's our webmaster, and he and I are sharing the same expression.
Well, it's been more enhanced over last year.
He keeps working at it.
There is some additional information,
If I were to come into town and wonder where to go,
Yeah. No,
It's
it's
a new
fair.
website.
We always keep working. Bill keeps working at it. Every now and then I ask him to do something different, but not normally. I just let Bill keep working at it.
and I'm always open to suggestions.
In the back, somebody saw another hand over here.
Well, I was just going to say that when I was looking for the location of the church on Google Maps, I saw the fire truck, so I figured this is where I want to go.
Well, talk to you about the story. I mean, I don't know if you know the story, but arson fires did huge damage to both of our buildings back in 2013, and so that's what you were seeing. Another story, perhaps best saved for another day. Okay. But, well, I mean, we kind of didn't talk about it, I guess, except I did say to you that a number of people prefer it. I mean, just a quick show of hands, those of you, I mean, are there people in this room who appreciate what we did this last summer?
I like doing it.
That's why I did it. There are people who appreciated it. So the future. We have concerns and constraints. We have options and opportunities. Yes, ma'am.
You know, I really enjoyed using that space this summer. But I'm looking forward to using this space this winter, so I'm sort of wishy-washy
there you go.
there.
Concerns and constraints, options and opportunities. I can list some of them. Hard for a normal Sunday. We talked about the altar guild. It's not twice as much work, but it's probably at least 50 to 75% more work for the altar guild. Hard to think about doing the forum between services when we've got people going straight over there as opposed to coming here. We had a slow start this morning, but at least as the morning's gone on here during our forum time, people have wandered in and it's gotten a little bit bigger. Hard to imagine doing that if people are going over next door. Coffee hour in the slushy season. It was hard to get people to walk over from there to here in the summer when it was beautiful out. But if that road is slushy, wet, rainy, snow on the side,
Won't happen.
so to your point, the way we're set up right now, I don't see us doing it during this time of year. For special services, yes. So there's the pet blessing reminder in 2 weeks. We'll be back over there because we're doing the pet blessing at 10:15 across the street during the service. Bring your pets. Bring your little betta fish in a fish tank. That's what Jordan did last year. Mostly people bring their dogs. But I'd love for somebody to bring your goat or your llama
Or their snake.
or your snake or your hedgehog. Although it turns out hedgehogs are boring during the daytime. I knew somebody who had hedgehogs for pets once, and they said it's really a bad choice of a pet because they're nocturnal. Which means during the day when you want to see your cute little hedgehog, they're holed up. And at night, they just make this bad choice of pet, just saying. So yeah, for special services like that, we'll go over there occasionally. If Michael Curry agrees to come back sometime, we'll be right over there.
You might want to say who Michael Curry is.
If you don't know, Michael Curry is our presiding bishop, and oh my God, talk about bringing energy into a room. Next summer, probably. Hasn't been decided yet, but I kind of think that in total, I think people thought it was a good idea. So I'm guessing we're going to do it again next summer. Other opportunities. What do you think? Are there other opportunities for us to do so? Is that something to keep in mind?
I was thinking about the holiday season, but that would be double trouble.
We do on Easter Sunday for the last 2 years. We've done our 10. We've kept our 8 o'clock service here, but our 10:15 across the way. I think you're right. I think Advent comes to mind and Christmas, and the problem is Advent is so laden with symbols. We have that amazing creche that Helen helped us make, which is the inside of the altar turned around and opened during Advent and then filled for Christmas season. Well, we're not going to do that twice, and we're not going to move that over every Sunday. Those pieces are fragile.
We can,
But we could put live camels over there?
We have an extra camel.
Oh, we have an extra camel.
Once it's
Has the head been glued back on?
No.
Okay. That's why we have an extra. That's why we have an extra. It was damaged in shipping, so they sent us a new one.
But you know, really, St. Helens is not the priority with the road cruise in Bend, and it really does.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean,
And during Advent and Christmas, that road is no fun to walk across.
no, all I'm saying is I think that, no road is a priority in Bend in the winter.
Well, St. Helens is really low on the list.
Third Street is a nice block. So, so anyhow, but what else? I'm thinking it'd be nice to do something occasionally. What else would be a good time to think about doing it there? Anybody have a thought?
At least maybe fifth Sundays.
Fifth
At the
Sundays.
least. Like maybe a Sunday a month. A Sunday a season.
Yeah. Too confusing.
people,
Well,
people
Yeah.
have that.
Many years ago,
Uh-huh.
when we first got the building, we were doing a Sunday evening service.
Oh, were you involved in that?
We did that
Were
over
you
there.
doing that?
Yeah.
Who was the we? Who was the we doing it?
Oh, well, the whole church.
The whole church, really? I hear there were like 15 people at one.
Yeah, there were, at most.
Okay, now let's be clear. I want to be
That's true.
clear about that. It's a
But,
great idea.
but all I'm saying is that's, if we do another service, that's
Oh,
an
absolutely.
opportunity for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After skiing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On Saturday, so you, and Saturday evening after skiing, right?
Well, we tried it first Saturday evening, and that was in this building. That was before we got the other building. And that didn't go very well either. And so then after we got into that building, we did it on Sunday night with a very quiet service.
I can imagine doing something. I think it would be different than what we do on a typical Sunday morning. A couple of the options that I've thought about this too. Contemplative service. Not a lot of words.
I'm not saying we're ready for that.
I'm not saying we are. I'm not saying we're not. But I'm not. Yeah, I'm with you. A Celtic service of a different kind. Those are some different ideas that
Different
I've thought
music.
about.
Different music.
Different music,
Yeah.
different kind of style of doing things. Those are possibilities.
Just passing the chalice and food.
But I will tell you, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen not because I'm doing it, but because we're doing it. Anything else you want to add to this about worship at St. Helens in particular before? Because there's something else I want to really get to about St. Helens.
This is just perhaps slightly off topic, but you're not actually making all these decisions in a vacuum. There is a liturgy committee that is involved with helping make those decisions. So,
Well, yeah. To that point, actually, the reason we come back to why we started doing it, why we did it over the summer. Actually, it was a conversation at liturgy team because I brought it to the liturgy team after Michael Curry was here. I said, wouldn't it be nice to use St. Helens occasionally, maybe once a month? I said, and somebody in the liturgy team said, well, why don't we just worship there for the summer? That actually wasn't my idea early on, but in April, as we talked about it, and then talked about it more in the next few weeks, we decided, why not do it there during the summer?
And
that's how that
anybody
emerged.
can go to the liturgy meeting.
Yeah, liturgy team meets. It's in the calendar. It's I think typically the first Tuesday of the month now. Yeah, if you want to know more, talk to me, talk to Bill, talk to Helen, talk to Peggy, talk to Gay. Some of us go to the same meeting. Usually there's somebody not there, but we've all been at least one of those meetings together, all of us, and some others besides. So, okay, you ready to shift gears a little bit? Question related to that is, what is St. Helens for, and what is any of this we have here for?
Building up the kingdom
Building up the kingdom. For whom?
for the members of the kingdom. For everyone.
For everyone. There we go. I want to kind of push on that a little bit. It's all well and good for us to talk about what we like, but the bigger question is, those of you who are here, we got St. It was not we in that sense because I wasn't here yet. Trinity got St. Helens, that whole other building there, in order to expand mission and opportunities, right? Well, the reality is, this whole church is here for something just beyond what we want and what we need. It's for the bigger picture. Famously, William Temple, one-time Archbishop of Canterbury back in the mid-20th century, a long time ago now, William Temple said that the church is the only institution that exists for the benefit of those who are not members. We're not here just to do church the way we like to, but we're here for people who aren't even here.
Oh, I'm just wondering if I preempted other people's
Probably.
answers to that question.
Probably.
Okay.
Well, I think the other thing.
It's a bit rhetorical anyhow, but yeah.
I think the other thing is to remind everybody, those that have been here a long time, we actually voted our whole congregation to stay right here. because we like being in the center then, we like to be a presence here, we like to do the outreach from here. And that's why we bought St. Helens. So it wasn't just for worshiping, it was for the whole community to be able to use that building for other things than just worship.
And that gets to the point, what's in any of this that's been entrusted to us? What's it for?
Mm-hmm.
Who's it for? Not just on a Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Education and Spirituality Committee, which we'll talk about here now a bit, reminds me that there was a strategic plan back in September of 2012. And some of you are nodding your heads because you remember this. One element of it stated, on or before January 2017, we will be known as a center for education, community, and spiritual life. That was the ambitious goal. Now, a lot happened after 2012. We talked about the fires. Okay? That disrupted a lot of things. That interim between rectors went longer, in large part because of the fires. So, the Episcopal Church, where you are our neighbor, even if you are not one of us. Those are related. Yeah.
Can you remind me of the timing? September 2012, was that towards the end of Christie's
That was after
time?
Christie.
That was after Christie's had left. Okay.
Because the strategic plan, among other things, talks about when you're going to get a new rector, which you didn't do. You didn't hit that target, by the way.
Thank
It's going to be by January of 2014. You missed it. We're late. Bill, you did a bad job with that search committee. Bill was chair of that committee. But if you done it January 24th.
I want to object. I was a member of that committee, and I think they did a wonderful job.
Bill knows that was my tongue in my cheek. Again, the fires, among other things, principally the fire, but other reasons. It meant you needed to take more time for that interim than you had at one time in September of 2012 thought you were going to do.
Not to mention the results of the search.
Not to mention, I wouldn't be here, I'm sure, if you had stuck to that original timeline, for whatever that's worth. So.
Not quite what I meant, but.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was a chance for me to play it in a self-serving way.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Education and Spirituality Committee was formed in part to help you reach this goal here. Okay? Again, I identified challenges in meeting that goal and other goals, including the search. The arson fires. For them in particular, the death of Marcus Borg. His getting ill and then dying. He and Marianne were key consultants and supporters of what they were doing. And he died, which is a tragedy in all kinds of ways. And a very small sliver of that tragedy is how it impacts these plans. And then the realization on the part of the committee, at least, that if you're going to do a big event, you're going to get a national or perhaps even international speaker to come here, the space isn't big enough. You're not going to pay the costs by charging people to go to an event there and bring in my good friend Diana Butler-Bass. She's Marianne's better friend, just in case you didn't know. But it's going to be hard to figure out a way to have a price point for your tickets that pay for the kind of quality that you're talking about doing. So those are some of their identified constraints. But still they've carried on, and I just have a quick list of some of the things they've done in the last couple of years. We talked about Marcus, Journey to Easter, Marcus and John Dominic Crossan back in March 2014 before Marcus got sick. Something that happened immediately thereafter. Charles Sams we had May of last year. Visions of Hope, we had a couple of their art shows, one of which was September of last year. Trinity Institute this past February, streaming thing. Community events with COCC, including Who's Occupying Whom, Native American concerns. This past week, an info event on domestic sex trafficking. I got to tell you, it didn't get a huge crowd, but it was a good, solid presentation.
That one of the other problems that you haven't listed up there is I don't think the committee has had the support of all of the people in the congregation, just showing up to some of these things.
The challenge with a lot of these things, Black Lives Matter, who's occupying whom, talking about Native American relations, Domestic sex trafficking. These aren't really fun. And it's hard to get a lot of people excited about coming. They're important, but they're hard topics to get people enthusiastic about. I mean, that's just the honest truth about it. And that's been a focal point, focus for their work this past year or so in particular. Yes, ma'am.
These were also open to the community,
Open to the
correct?
community.
With good, what do I want to call it, publicity.
This last week, Joan,
I
you and I
never
were there.
saw
There
it
were
anywhere
10
outside
people
of
maybe
you.
from Trinity. There was a good showing in some respects. About 10 people maybe from Trinity, I'm thinking, and maybe 3 times that from elsewhere.
But they didn't hit the community partners that would have come, because it was a good time, it was lunch hour time, and it could have been filled because it would have solved or satisfied some education that community
that may
partners
be.
need.
This wasn't
was
really
great.
our event. We tried to support it, and we certainly hosted it. This was Interfaith Network of Central Oregon, INCO. It was their event, so those criticisms don't really stay with us. But that's just to say we have done some things in spite of those constraints that we talked about. And on the positive side, they note that important events have been talked about or have happened, and important conversations have happened. Great partnerships in the community with COCC and INCO, for example.
In regard to publicity, if you have some ideas that they haven't used, because they do a lot of emailing to all of the churches, to the schools, they put up posters in the community. If you have ideas, please tell Gail about.
Well, here's the
I
thing.
have, they're not.
Here's the thing,
anymore.
Peggy.
Yeah.
Draw a line through that. They're tired. And that group has decided that it isn't going to try and push that rock up the hill any longer. So we come back to that question we asked earlier at the end of the worship piece. Why are we here? And what are we here for? And that's our facilities as well as our congregational mission. So I remind you just quickly, our mission, this is what we state as our mission. Our mission is to minister to the spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional needs of all people by sharing God's love and gifts. And our vision, and I actually kind of think we miss up on terms, but that's neither here nor there. And then some of the things that we talked about doing, including to be a spiritual haven for those who seek to know God more deeply, provide opportunities for all, to serve, a center of community for those in downtown Bend, to work in collaboration to address the needs of others. I just offer to you it's something like that. And I ask, is that a committee's job, or is that something we all share? That's a bit rhetorical. I hope you understand that. I understand that that's really our job, not simply their job, whoever they are. Okay, is that fair? This is a photograph that Barbara and or I took of a particular place in Spain, on that Camino, a little village called Castro Heavy. And in this village, they had this little open door place called Hospital del Alma.
Two people had.
Two people. They opened their doors and they let people come in. And they provided music, and they provided some hot chocolate on a cold day, and they had art and reflections and a fire. Barb loved it. Barb loved it. She spent hours there that afternoon because it was a cold, miserable, wet day. But something like that is, maybe suggested by, something like this.
The translation of Hospital del Alma is Hospital of the Soul.
Hospital, going back to actually its original root meaning, related absolutely to hospitality.
Bring your soul in.
Yeah.
And you did. I did.
And it was a healing place for Barb. So that takes us to the question, what next? We did a couple movie nights this summer. Didn't have huge turnout for it, but we had some good turnout for the first one in particular, because we really managed to find a nerve But we had a good turnout for this. Kate tells me, Kate, who facilitated this conversation, Miracle on 34th Street, Christmas in July, Kate said she thought we had about 5 times as many people as she expected. So, in spite of the fact that I was disappointed with the turnout, she was thrilled. It was her presentation. So, we did those. Those are things we can do, and we can do them better than we did them. We worked pretty hard to keep it simple.
But it was well done. I mean, people, you had drinks, you had
There are
everything.
basic logistical things you got to think through. Yeah, absolutely. I've had some suggestions if we do movie night in the future. One came anonymously on a piece of paper. The other came from a particular group that met this past week and passed on their suggestions. We could do these kinds of things. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we just went to Sister's Movie House last night and saw Jesus Christ Superstar with Ted Neely. I got to hug him.
Of Christ.
I got Second Coming
Better
of
than
Jesus.
that.
It was.
Second comment.
Did you get a picture to show Ginger?
It was fabulous, and you know, they're doing another tour next year. I think they said. Man, that would be a fabulous thing to do. It was very powerful. Really was.
We come back to the question, is this someone else's job, or is it our common mission? I think that might be my last slide. That's the question I want to put before us right now. Yeah. Ideally, we'll talk about it now for another hour. Vestry meets at a special planning day on October 6th. We're going to gather at 9 o'clock in the morning. Everything's open. I guess you could crash the party. It really isn't intended for the whole congregation, but it is intended that the vestry is going to talk about these kinds of things, among other things. Why are we here? Is our mission and our vision statements, are those still valid? Do we need to do something different? Do we need to talk about something different? Do we need to find other ways to involve more people? Yeah.
I assume you're aware of this, but
Never assume.
that's why I'm mentioning it.
Thank you.
The National Church put out, they had a meeting the other 2 days ago of bishops and executive committee, and they put it out on a video that anybody can see. I strongly suggest that that's something that at least the vestry wants. I was intending, if it's all right, to put the link on the prayer list when I send it out today, so that anybody can watch it.
The bishops of the Episcopal Church get together a couple times a year, typically in September and then sometime in the spring of the year. And so the meeting that's going on is one of the regularly scheduled meetings of the House of Bishops. Meeting in Detroit this week. And what you're talking about is the executive committee, which is representational of the other house. See, we have bicameral legislation in the Episcopal Church. Bishops can't impose rules on us. Remind you of that. Rules get adopted from the Episcopal Church when the bishops and the House of Deputies agree. And we only meet every 3rd year, so it doesn't happen often that we change the rules. But, as you point out, the executive committee of the House of Deputies met with the House of Bishops this past week for part of the regular bishops' meetings. And that's a little bit unprecedented, because usually the bishops meet and they do what they do a lot all year, all the time. And the convention gets together every 3rd year. And it's kind of not equal that way. So to invite the House of Deputies is one of those positive signs, some of us would say. Yes, ma'am.
I guess the one thing, just looking at your sentence there, is that I do feel that there needs to be a person, committee, someone in charge of things. But then I agree that it is a common mission with us, and as a congregation or as people that work outside of just our congregation should be bringing ideas and proposals to whoever is in charge. But there really needs to be someone who is overseeing what the heck's going on.
Absolutely. Movie nights, for example. Go back to just to something as simple and basic as movie nights. And we tried, I told you, by design, I tried really hard to keep it as simple as possible so it didn't become daunting. Reality is, though, if we're going to do more movie nights, somebody has to own that. Somebody has to say, I'm going to organize movie nights at Trinity, even if that person doesn't do every single one of them. And, you know, so at every level, there still needs to be some accountability. There needs to be responsible individuals. In fact, I think you recognize that.
Yeah.
You know, in my sort of ideal, fanciful way, every different organization and group in the church says, how can I help us use what we have more helpfully, more faithfully? How can I, if I'm involved, pick a group. How can I host an event to which I would invite the whole community? How can I talk to Jan and say, Jan, is this weekend available? Because I'd like to do something really wonderful. So it's not simply waiting for them to do it, but for us to own it. Yep, that was my last one. Thank you. I have to put my white dress back on. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.